Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar series at Shakti Health and Wellness Center. Today we are going to be talking with Kim Salzman, our health coach at Shakti Health and Wellness Center, about the immune benefits of the autonomic nervous system, a functional medicine perspective, because this is the time where we really need to understand what stressors we're on and how to combat them so that our immune system stays active. What is unique to this part? Why is this important right now? Is because we have this time of year. Go to the next slide. There's some unique stressors at this time period. We have shorter days, so it's darker. We have less sun exposure, which helps with our vitamin D and immune system. We're less active. We're indoors. There's more people gathered indoors, like family gatherings, holiday preparations, which can be very stressful. There's a lot more contained rooms for infections. We're not out and about in the outdoors. And it's also hard for many of us to stay on our food plans because there's so many celebrations. So, Kim, what do you see during this time of year for stressors?
At this time of year, I usually see more disrupted sleep, more frequent or lingering infections, and often some weight gain, which are all signs that the body is under extra stress.
Right. And, we usually have our regular coping mechanisms, which is not wrong. This is one from my favorite bakery. It's the concept is that when we're stressed, we lean on sugar, we lean on alcohol, and it's, celebratory, obviously, but we want to find through this webinar concepts that are a little bit healthier for us. So I'm not saying it's wrong to have a dessert or a glass of wine, but I'm saying that we are also able to find a lot more safer and more healthier ways, maybe, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So our webinar goals this tonight is to see how the autonomic nervous system regulates and is directly linked to immune system and inflammation. And we're going to find what the role of the vagus nerve is in the immune modulation. Remember, the vagus nerve is the primary nerve for the parasympathetic system. And so its role in creating immune balances is very foundational. We're also going to look at lifestyle and functional interventions to optimize our autonomic nervous system balance for immune health. The autonomic dysfunction, when we have dysfunction of the nervous system, it can present as any of these. And so it's very foundational to many illnesses that we see. We see many itises show up when this dysregulation happens.
Yes, exactly. Like looking at this is really foundational to focus on like those lifestyle changes that can help calm that autonomic nervous system at dysfunction that you can just incorporate into your everyday life, especially during the holidays.
Right. So just before we kind of go into those tools, I just want to spend a minute about talking about how we break down. And this is the concept of the autonomic nervous system, which is the involuntary nervous system. We have the voluntary nervous system where I want to pick up my phone. But the involuntary is something that reacts to our stressors. And there's good stress and bad stress, and not all stress is bad. But when our body feels like there's a stressor or a demand for change for our body, whether it's our child fell down, we're stuck in traffic, we haven't sent that email, or any stressor that is life-threatening, we activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight system. It's our adrenaline, it's cortisol, it's our adrenal glands becoming active to get us out of danger. And once that's done, we need to activate the parasympathetic system or our rest and digest system. So when we compensate for that, because these two systems cannot be on at the same time, we want to work on things that help us rest and digest so that the separation of these two things is really where all the symptoms are. And once you start to kind of charge your battery and increase that parasympathetic system, you start to be able to become more resilient to the stress that's coming to you. So, in your sessions, Kim, how do you recognize when someone is sympathetic dominant or sympathetic overdrive?
Well, oftentimes my clients will come in and they're just describing themselves feeling tension or shallow breathing. Like they feel like they're always constantly just breathing in the chest, not down into their belly. So they're just constantly doing those short, quick breaths. or they might even feeling like wired, but they're tired. Like they go to bed and they can't fall asleep, and they're lying there wide awake, but they're exhausted. It's like they've been on caffeine, but maybe they haven't had any caffeine. So these are those things that like start coming up and they're saying, but they're not necessarily attaching that to a stressor, a particular stressor.
Yeah, no, and we don't even know that it is. And just as you were saying that, I found myself taking a deep breath because I was holding my breath as well. And that's very commonly what we do. And it's the physiology behind how the immune system gets suppressed when we're constantly in sympathetic overdrive. So, what is this connection between our nervous system and it is in our immune system? And it involves very highly on the gut and the nervous system. The immune system and the nervous system are extremely connected. There are some tightly interconnected through cytokines, neurotransmitters through the vagus nerve. So the nerve that innervates the gut tells the body to make inflammatory chemicals that communicate that the cells are in danger. So the cytokines, we've heard that through COVID, cytokine storm. That's when the body's immune system says there's a problem. And it's like they're sending their friends out with messengers to recruit more cells that are white cells to come and get the enemy. So these are called cytokines. They're not all bad or good. They're actually very helpful for putting out fires in our body. Neurotransmitters, which are dopamine, serotonin, they connect to our immune system too. And that's also made, serotonin, for example, is also made in the gut and is also directly responsible through the vagus nerve. The immune system also can express adrenaline type of markers as well as cholinergic, so they can activate that sympathetic and it's a direct feedback where they're kind of talking to each other, so they can activate that sympathetic parasympathetic system. So the immune system is also in charge of how well we're resting and digesting. The stress hormones like cortisol, norepinephrine, they can also alter immune cell function and cytokine profile. If we're constantly stressed, and you might be able to relate to this, if you're very stressed out during the holidays, typically you get sick. It might take you a long time to get better, as opposed to if you got sick in July, you might bounce back from that a little bit quicker. So there's a huge connection, and what we want to do is be able to identify what are our tools.
So yes, and that's where I think when a lot of people say are like, I want to be healthy over the holidays. And so they think about food or diet or maybe like taking a lot of vitamin C or things like that. And what we really got to think about is we've got to support, like you're talking about, that parasympathetic nervous system, that our body's rest and repair mode. And there's lots of other ways, not that food and those other, potentially supplements aren't helpful and aren't important, but those other tools that we're going to talk about today that really can play a big role in helping support your body's rest and repair mode, to help that parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, so we can just spend a minute on the complication of the immune system. So there's an innate immune system, which is our first responder, and then there's an adaptive immune system that kind of makes those antibodies and those B cells and T cells that are involved over there. But the first line of defense for us is often our skin and our mucous membranes, like what's in our nose and what's lining our lungs. It's also happens within like seeing the insult to 96 hours, and it kind of involves these cells called natural killer cells, mast cells, macrophages, neutrophils, they're all types of white cells. And some of these we check in our labs, and other ones we don't really check on a regular basis. But the whole point is that this system of the fighter cells will also be greatly impacted if your parasympathetic system is charged. So your entire army of responders is going to be on higher alert and work more efficiently when your parasympathetic system is on alert and go. There's also we want to identify that not all stress is bad for us. There's eustress, which is good stress, and bad stress. So we want to identify the difference because we don't all want to live, in a bubble. And also when they did studies that looked at mice that were kept in stress-free environments, those mice died. So we know that we need a low level of stress to be able to survive, thrive, improve. Like, for example, exercise, you want to build muscle, you want to run a marathon, or you want to get to a goal, you have to stress your body in order to reach that. So not all stress is bad, but bad stress does lead to immune dysfunction, and it also leads to bad habits, right? So when we're tired and we're not feeling like we're more depressed or we feel more bloated, we also kind of not do the habits that we want. We don't go out as much in the sense in the sun. We're not moving as much. We're more tired. So deleterious stress has been also associated with lack of self-care. And so we know that when we are able to um, kind of look at that in our perspective of what stress does to the human body, we have poor outcomes of health. We have inflammation. We get weight gain. We get low motivation to do, what Kim and Dr. Rao tell you. You don't want to do it because you're just not as motivated. And there's an increased rate of cancers. There's an increased autoimmune because remember, immune system dysfunction can show up as autoimmune disease, but it can also show up as I can't fight infection. So it sounds like, well, my immune system's overactive, but my immune system's underactive. And this is the complicated factor of the immune system. But our body's great ability to heal this and to accept that susceptibility to infections is about kind of balancing that immune system, which is what our body's capable of if we kind of go back after that parasympathetic system. So, long-term stress is the problem. Acute stress is not usually the problem. Acute stress is when we have danger, when we need to send something out, when we see our child fall, a house is on fire. These are things that save our lives. And so they are not the problem. It's the long-term stress that decreases our ability to in the immune system. And in fact, they've looked at this in the setting of vaccines. So a lot of people are getting their flu shots now. Your ability to actually take that vaccine information, which is information to your immune cells to mount that response in case you saw that antigen again, is decreased when we're under chronic stress. Also, if you look at your wounds, if you get a cut and things like that, the wound healing goes down typically when we're under chronic stress. And it also results in our resistance to, clearing infections and cancer prevention. So it's not just about not getting a cold, it's got bigger implications than that.
Yeah, I mean, it may really be surprising for people to going back to that vaccine comment that one of the best things you can do to improve the uptake of that vaccine is to get that good night's rest, that whole rest and repair that we were talking about before. And that's very important at night in your sleep. And we'll even be mentioning that later.
Right. So the vagus nerve can sense inflammation and it inhibits the cytokine production. It's known as that anti-inflammatory pathway. So when your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that innervates that parasympathetic system, it can actually turn off inflammation, even though you're sitting in a place where, you should be inflamed because it can handle the problem a lot more efficiently. There's some receptors called nicotinic receptors, and there's certain types of cells that suppress some cytokines that can keep that inflammation going. So once the cascade starts and it's better able to deal with the problem, it doesn't keep the problem going by communicating with the cytokines. So there's an anti-inflammatory break that happens when our vagus nerve can be on high alert and in full force. Kim, what kind of lifestyle practices do you think can help activate this vagus nerve reflex?
So the big ones really are like breath work. I don't know. Some of you may have heard about box breathing or 4-7-8 breathing, which are just two of many. Meditation and honestly, gentle movement, taking walks. I know Dr. Rao talks a lot about getting outside and like having that sunshine. And so doing that while taking those walks, it's like you're getting a double bonus there of being able to do those things. And then all of that impacts like your sleep where you get that rest and repair. So things that you do during the day to help with that helps you really for all 24 hours of your day.
Yeah, and to come back to your point, Kim, on like the supplement thing, was that people think, oh, I want to support my immune system and it's going to be a vitamin C or a zinc. It actually comes back to things that are free and we have with us, like breathing. We always have our breath. And so this kind of breath work topic is excellent in terms of how accessible it is to us. And they're also very evidence-based responses. Meditation and movement and breath work has a lot of science behind it as well. So what's this crosstalk? So chronic inflammation, and we've said this a couple of times, is that it increases cytokines like IL-6 and TNF alpha and something called oxidative stress, which is the stress on our body from things that may be out of our control, pollution, so a medication that's not working properly in us not making the right choices in terms of maybe a bad diet or sitting too much. Those are stressors on the body, not sleeping, cause oxidative stress. And so that can reduce the vagal tone. And that can look like low heart rate variability, which I think we'll be talking about a little bit later. And it leads to low resilience, meaning you're going to be more susceptible to getting that infection in a room full of people as opposed to letting it bounce off of you. And that also can set you up for chronic inflammation. But a high vagal tone can cause a reduced inflammatory state. It can improve that gut immune balance and it improves your chance of recovering faster. So heart rate variability for me is a proxy for how good your parasympathetic system is, because what heart rate variability takes into effect is the balance between that sympathetic and that parasympathetic system. And so you can use the heart rate variability to kind of gauge what kind of state you're in terms of that balance. And low resilience looks like getting sick more often and not recovering as quickly. Kim, can you share with us what you're seeing for low resilience?
That's such a good question because I feel like helping our clients, our patients see like what are the signs over these holidays at this time of year can be so helpful because it really can show up in sneaky ways because it's not just about getting sick more often or taking longer to recover. Even though that's a huge part of it, I also see in my clients as feeling more drained or run down after normal stress, like things that they normally do on a daily basis, but now all of a sudden it's just too much. Having more trouble sleeping or staying asleep. So sometimes you could fall asleep really easily, but you're waking up at that 2, 3, 4 a.m. mark and you can't get back to sleep. Another big one is noticing that your patience tank is just like low. Things that wouldn't normally bother you suddenly feel like a big deal. It's really your body's way of saying like, hey, I'm stuck in survival mode and need a reset.
Yeah, those are such great examples. And yeah, I mean, it can look like anything, but people know their bodies and how they usually respond. And so a big change from that is usually suggestive of a low gas tank or a low charge rate. And so you can use this HRV as which we can see on these wearable devices, like Oura Rings, for example, that are able to be tracked, and you can use them to see how the strength of your parasympathetic system is, what events make it, what interventions, like when I meditate, my HRV goes up. When I have a good night's sleep, my HRV goes up. Or when my HRV goes up, I sleep better. But you can do it through these wearable devices like Fitbit or a Ring. So have you used HRV, Kim, with your clients?
Yes, like you can definitely see it immediately with your recovery, like with seeing that recovery in the HRV. Like you can use it with your Apple Watch for one. Like I have the Aura Ring, and obviously you get that feedback overnight from the Aura Ring. The Apple Watch, you can actually use the breathing technique, the meditation and breathing app on the watch. And as soon as you do it, you can look in the health app on your phone and see how your HRV has changed even in that minute. So it can be fascinating and very motivating to see like the impact that has.
That's amazing. And what are tips that you have them use on how and like how to use those devices?
Well, the key is really like I tell clients that using the devices like the Aura Ring or Apple Watch or Fitbit, excuse me, like as feedback is important, but it's not a grade. Like a lot of people can get wrapped around their head around the fact of like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing good enough. The key is not about like perfect numbers because really this is truly individual to the person and what they're going through and what their body is going through. So what we want to look at are the patterns. Notice like what helps your HRV improve, like better sleep, breath work, hydration is even huge. And even slowing down your morning, right? So that you can start to like connect those dots between daily choices and how your body actually responds. So we want to look at these trends over time. And that's something that Dr. Rao and I can definitely do in our sessions to like be like, okay, let's see what's happening and see that trend. And the Aura Ring does do a nice job of saying like, hey, your HRV, it doesn't say whether it's good or not. It starts looking at those trends. And if they notice like a trend drop that your HRV has dropped, they'll flag that and say like, hey, what's going on? Maybe look at your lifestyle or what's happening
Yeah, those
with your
great.
HRV.
That's great. And that's a great point you brought up because one of the stressors I find to be most problematic is time stress, where you are, just taking that morning to slow down as opposed to I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to be there by this, I got to be there by that is very stressful. And that happens also in the evenings when you're trying to get to the concert, the holiday concert, or a gathering, or, there's all these events now in the holiday season where you're kind of constantly under time pressure. So that's a great point is to kind of just take a breath and kind of slow down and just understand that this is just a very packed time and it could be very stressful just to know that you have lots of demands on your time.
And that's something we can talk about in sessions as well. Like maybe there are some things that can give. Like not
Yeah,
everything has to happen. And so like we can talk about
prioritizing.
prioritizing and figuring things out. So
That's truly an art to figure out that. I agree with you. Prioritizing is very, very essential during this time. Stress and immune dysregulation. So chronic psychological stress. So prolongs that sympathetic drive. So it's like our anxiety, our sense of fear, our sense of like, oh my gosh, I have to do so much this today. How am I going to get all this done? That's going to just keep prolonging that and it impairs that natural killer cell activity. It impairs your T cells and your antibody response. And again, it can increase not only just infections, but autoimmune flares and also poor vaccine response. So, Kim, what's one from your side? What's one strategy that you use to help clients build stress resilience?
I mean, I know that I'm sounding like a broken record today. But like really it's the sleep, it's movement, deep breathing, and gratitude journaling. And maybe not all of these, because again, we're not trying to stress you out by giving you too many things, but it's like which one resonates with you the most? Like, do you want to work on sleep first or movement? Or maybe it is that you're going to take a couple minutes a day for deep breathing or writing down one thing you're grateful for before you go to bed. These things are all things that can help with that stress resilience.
Yeah, I love that you brought in gratitude journaling because I feel like we don't talk about that enough in the sense of how amazing gratitude and sense of gratitude is for our body, not just healing, not just for the immune system, but aging in general. There's been studies that show that optimism and feeling gratitude more and kind of just being hopeful is also a great tool for longevity. So people have been shown to live longer based on their outlook their optimism. And I think that key part of that is gratitude. So yeah, there's simple habits that rewire the autonomic nervous system. And I'm just so happy to like have you repeat them. Sometimes, Kim, is actually important because it just stresses it in different ways. There's also a gut brain immune axis, right? So there's the gut and brain and the gut immune. We talk about that a lot, but the vagus nerve also connects to the gut microbiome. And remember, I always talk about how important the microbiome is. So part of that rest and digest system is that the microbiome is there. The microbiome is 100 trillion colonies. It gives us 3 million genes. We're only 23,000 genes. So we're 10% of what our microbiome is. And then the microbiome does so much for us, not just digest our food, but it is also a place where vitamins are made, a place where our neurotransmitters are made, a place where our brain gets that gut brain connection is there. So the immune system can talk directly to the brain and create neural inflammation, for example, is anxiety in the brain. So when you feel anxious, that's an inflammation, that's an itis of the brain. So that is can be shut down by the signaling that we have, but the microbiome also makes something called serotonin, which is where we feel happy, not too anxious, not too depressed, but just kind of happiness. And so that is a very big influence. The microbiome is a very big influence on the autonomic nervous system tone and the immune tolerance. And remember, food is a huge, huge kind of informative tool that allows that microbiome to grow. And when we have bad bugs in our gut from whatever it is, too much stress, not sleeping, having a bad diet, or eating a lot of saturated fats, sugar, it alters that vagus nerve signaling, and it can cause worsening systemic inflammation.
I mean, this is a great reminder right now that eating a fiber-rich, nutrient-packed diet helps keep the immune system steady and resilient. And a way to picture this, like as you're going to all your parties and you're going out to eat, or like Thanksgiving, all these things that are coming up, think about your plate and make it a goal that half of your plate are non-starchy vegetables like cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli. Like we can name many of them. You could just quickly Google non-starchy vegetables and try to get half of your plate is non-starchy vegetables at each of these events, and your gut will thank you.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's sometimes the key. Also, you can bring something if you know you're going to a party that's just, the food choices aren't going to be great. You can bring something like a potluck to the party where you're eating like a salad of some sort. Not maybe the main part of your meal, but some part of your meal. Or sometimes what I do is I eat before I go so that I'm not tempted too much. But yeah, that's a great way to look at it, is the way you look at your plate. The vagus activation and immunity. So we've said this a couple of times, but I want to reiterate that there are ways that we can, evidence-based ways that we can enhance vagal tone and breath work. You always have your breath. Slow diaphragmatic breathing exercises increases HRV. In fact, when you breathe out longer than when you breathe in, like that 4-7-8 breath, where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, you exhale for 8, it allows you to actually increase your heart rate variability. Cold exposure also activates that vagal reflex. I'm not saying everybody needs to go do a cold plunge all the time, although that is really great for a lot of people. But being cold can also activate vagal reflexes. Meditation and mindfulness reduce cytokine production, and even things that activate vagal tone, like singing very loudly in a choir, or just in the shower, how someone would sing, or just unabashed singing out loud, chanting, humming, they all stimulate the vagus nerve. And then, of course, the social connections. So in the blue zones, where they looked at the longest living people, the healthiest people, one of the major forms wasn't just their foods that they were eating, but it was also their social connectiveness. So social connected connection is a huge part of aging well, and it also activates oxytocin, which is our bonding hormone that mediates vagal action, that makes the vagus nerve more activated. So lots of ways to kind of think about how to activate your immune system. And when you coach, Kim, your clients on nutrition, how do you address that gut-brain connection?
Two things. Number one, like we just mentioned, that fiber-rich foods, like getting having a colorful plate, and really getting those vegetables on half of your plate. And then also really mindful eating, where I encourage my clients to take a SEC, stop, evaluate, and choose. Like really think about, like, is this helping your immune system, your vagal tone, those different things? Is this helping your body, or is this going to no, not be your body's friend? Let's not say harm your body, but not be your body's friend. And not that you're not going to sometimes do it. That's the choose part. Like, so meaning that if you are going to choose to have some treats, like really think about balancing that out by having more of those vegetables on your plate.
Right. Those are great, great ideas. And it does reinforce the vagal signaling and the immune tolerance. So, the sleep, the circadian rhythm, which was the webinar that we talked about at the last month. It's in the archives if anyone wants to listen to it. And the autonomic nervous system is also very key. And Kim has said this a couple of times, sleep quality directly affects the autoimmune balance and immune efficiency. The nighttime parasympathetic dominance, meaning that rest part, it promotes our repair. It promotes growth hormone. It promotes the fact that the cortisol is down and our body's in repair mode, is a very big intervention for us to kind of create that resilience. And when we are not aligned with our circadian rhythm, meaning up with the sun and down after sunset, not going to sleep, but just kind of calming down and settling down, not eating too much. Again, I go into a lot more of this in the circadian rhythm webinar, does activate the sympathetic system when we're misaligned. And when that sympathetic system is on a kind of in the dominant state, we do have chronic inflammation. So align the sleep-wake cycles also to restore parasympathetic. And that's where our immune system repairs. So Kim, how do you establish with your clients a circadian friendly routine during this time, especially with the holiday parties and such?
Yep. Like I try to focus on those simple shifts, right? And we want to keep things as simple as possible and getting natural light first thing, like as soon as you can. And that means like not ideally not through a window. Maybe you take your dog for a walk or you walk outside with your jacket on, take some deep breaths and get that morning light in. And then try to keep a consistent sleep schedule. I know that that can be challenging, but do it on as many days as possible that you go to bed and you wake up at the same time. And then cutting back on screens. Now, I know that that can be tough, especially if you want to be watching those holiday movies and everything. So then, but like put on the blue light glasses if you are going to continue to watch TV into the evening.
Great. Um, Again, these are all great points, and you can learn more if you want on the webinar that went over the circadian rhythm. Okay, so moving along to the root causes of the dysregulation, kind of a summary is that we can have it from chronic psychological stressors. We can have it from, our food choices and maybe not eating the healthiest choices, and we become somewhat deficient in B vitamins and magnesium and omegas, but we also can become deficient in those things when we're chronically stressed because it's a supply and demand issue. So our body demands more magnesium and B vitamins and anti-inflammatory nutrients like omegas when we're more stressed out. So even if you're eating the same and you're doing all the right things, you might be going through them and chewing them up faster, which then can cause more dysregulation. So glucose control is also a big part of it, and trying to eat things that kind of keep our glucose steady, and our sleep and circadian rhythm disruption. And then the toxic load and mitochondrial dysfunction, which can be from not seeing enough sun, or we're in a situation where we're indoors too much, like maybe we have mold or mycotoxin and now we can't open the windows because it's cold outside. So our toxin exposure can also go up around this time. So these are other ways that cause the immune dysregulation. Which of these do your clients find the easiest to adopt, Kim? Breath work, singing, social connections, anything?
I mean, I would say breath work is often one of the easier ones to just like fit into your day by for a minute. But I will tell you, like, there's an exercise that I often do with my clients called the Wheel of Life, and one of those things on there, one of the pieces is social connection, and it can often be surprising that that is a piece that people are missing, but they're so busy that they don't realize it. And when we talk about it, like realize how much it makes such a big difference and how that really can impact your stress and your resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a time where there seems to be a lot of people around and a lot of gatherings, but I think there's also a time, this is a big time for loneliness and people feeling kind of isolated because it's cold, because the weather's not great, and people aren't going out and seeing people face to face. Sometimes all we get are some Zoom calls, and which isn't bad. It's just that, seeing people face to face is also a wonderful way, but just a connection between someone, checking in with someone, whether it's Zoom or anywhere, can also be very, very healing. So this releases, we have good connections with people. It releases oxytocin, which is our bonding hormone, which is a very big proponent of vagal tone. So great things to remember. And just to also think about, there are ways to activate that vagus nerve and lower your stress level by wearing wearable devices that activate vagal tone. Kim, I know you're going to touch on this as like what are you telling your patients to do, but things like acupuncture and lymph treatments that we do at Shakti, the biomat that we have, the sauna, the alpha stim, these are all ways, and even our biocharger, we have ways to kind of add to the parasympathetic tone by kind of recharging the body through things like the biocharger, which activate natural energies, acupuncture, which activates the vagal system. So other ways to do it outside of just the things we discussed, maybe come in more often if you're local to Shakti to be able to take advantage of these interventions.
Yeah, there's so many ways to help lower stress, and the fact that you have these in the office and as a resource, and also you get some social connection when you walk in the door and you get those smiling faces. So it's just a multi variable situation where you're getting the social connection, you're able to use these wonderful tools that you have in the office, and then when you go home, you can continue supporting your nervous system by doing those tools that we already mentioned that you can do at home of breath work and light exposure and sleep and all those things.
Yeah, great. Thank you. How does this fit into our approach at Shakti? Just to kind of end with the big picture approach on why this is so important. So there's that approach that we have that's like remove it's kind of the functional medicine approach is that you have to remove the offending agents, you have to remove the things that are breaking you down before you can actually rebalance your body. So the stressors would be something to kind of think about. I mean, some stressors we can remove and other ones we just kind of have to live with. But this is maybe where you make that personal choice of maybe do I need to prioritize this? Is this something I have to do today or not? Maybe I'll prioritize my sleep and not go to that late night event. Things like that is where we can have our choices to remove things like toxins again. And that's where, working with us as a team will also help you kind of understand how are the ways you can remove some of these offending agents. Replacing those nutrients, replacing digestive enzymes, replacing things that are helping you sleep better, and working on things that are kind of helping you restore yourself. And then the third step is reinoculate. That usually has to do with things that help us digest or help us grow our better bugs, gut microbiome. Then we get into repair. So you can't start with repair. A lot of people come in and think they can just start, adding mitochondrial nutrients. I feel tired, so I'm going to help my mitochondria, which is where the powerhouse of my cell is, but it doesn't work that way because your body will get more depleted if you keep pressing on the gas in a car where you have no oil or gas in the car. So you're just going to run that car down if you just like you're going to run your body down if you start with the mitochondria as the first step. But then the rebalance part is where we kind of maintain ourselves is through the autonomic nervous system and our lifestyle therapies, which you can implement at any stage, right? So I would love to I always talk about it at my first appointment as all the lifestyle tools to keep us well and to start that healing process because ultimately we want to make the body feel like we're safe. And that's when real healing begins. So, Kim, where do you start when you're coaching in terms of starting point with your clients?
For supporting your autonomic nervous system, I often do start with sleep. Because that is what impacts everything. Your ability to choose the right foods, your ability to have the patience to deal with stress, like sleep is just that overarching umbrella.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when we're not sleeping, we're not craving kale usually, right? We're craving more sugars and fats. We're not wanting to go outside and be out in the sunlight or take on a new project because we're too tired. And we have more hours to reach for that cookie in the middle of the night because we're up and we're not making the best choices that way. So yeah, sounds like a great place to start. Um, so what are the key takeaways here? I know we've given you guys a lot of information. We'll have a Q&A afterwards. The autonomic nervous system regulates the immune tone. The vagal activation calms down inflammation. And lifestyle, again, is a very powerful medicine that can help us become resilient through this time period and all year long. So if you could choose one take-home message for clients today, Kim, what would that be?
Well, if you do one thing, like think about just picking one thing this week to focus on, to manage your stress. So I would focus on sleep and try setting a consistent bedtime and give yourself that short wind down routine, even 10 minutes to unplug and let your body know that it's time to rest. And we can talk about more of this at that Q&A. But just try to like pick that one thing, like with sleep, like what could you do for your sleep to help you wind down and get a good night's rest.
Yeah, that's great. That's functional neuroimmunology in practice. So that's great advice. So I just want to leave you with this slide, which is from Tal Ben-Shahar, who's actually an educator. He's a professor at Harvard, and he teaches the happiness course there. And he had said this in one of the lectures that I'd listened to, that stress is not the problem. It's the lack of recovery which causes the problem. And this really resonates with me because it's not stress. Because remember, stress is not the evil thing. It's good stress and bad stress, and we need stress in order to survive. But it's our lack of pause, our rest, and our breaks between the stressors and our activation of that parasympathetic that really will be the game changer. So this slide, I hope can resonate with a lot more of you as well. And after this, we'll go to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, in a few minutes we're going to jump over to the Q&A. We're going to give some time to type some of your questions into the Q&A tab. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen. And Dr. Jyoti is going to join live and answer your questions in order. Okay, we have our first question here. Um, the question is, for me, falling asleep is not a problem. Staying asleep is. What suggestions do you have?
So that's a really good question. So oftentimes, a big problem for people to stay asleep. So one would be to make sure that the room is cold. Cold is actually a very good influencer of sleep quality. So if you can keep the temperature to 68 or less, that would be something to think about. And then sometimes a weighted blanket, it's counterintuitive, but that actually the heaviness on you also kind of keeps people into a deeper sleep. The third thing would be to make sure that everything is dark and black, that you can't see your hand. And if you have a lux meter, like we talked about in the first one, would be to try to use that to make sure that it's 0 or 1. The intensity of light is very low, and that includes like night lights and different lights that are coming from your computer, sometimes from your charger. They'll start to keep you awake or awaken you in the middle of the night. If you need a night light, try to do a red light. It doesn't affect the melatonin that we make in our brain. And so then the other thing would be to maybe melatonin. Melatonin is a wonderful sleep aid, but regular melatonin starts to activate falling asleep. But long-acting melatonin, XR, typically will keep you asleep. So that would be something to try to make sure, and then kind of look back at your habits and make sure that you're not staring at your screen and all of that because that cortisol will come up. Another intervention that I found to be helpful when people wear their continuous glucose monitors is sometimes people are waking up because their blood sugar falls in the middle of the night. And so for those people who feel like that could be the problem, I have them take maybe a small amount of almonds or cut almonds before they go to sleep. And some of my patients have said high fiber foods that increase tryptophan or serotonin, like kiwi, has also been helpful to stay asleep. There's little tricks to kind of mimic things in our body that help us keep us asleep, like melatonin or serotonin, along with just the usual kind of good hygiene, sleep hygiene kind of concepts. There's also things like magnesium glycinate that is a really powerful nutrient or supplement that can be taken at bedtime, just maybe 200 milligrams. Magnesium threonate also can help kind of help with that continuation of the sleep. My other favorite sleep aid is something called phosphatidylcholine and phosphatidylserine. These are fatty acids that you can take around 5 o'clock at night or before, at bedtime that seem to stabilize cell membranes that kind of keep our brain calmer. And that helps us kind of stay asleep and reduce anxiety. Another supplement that seems to be good is L-theanine. Now, this goes after the fact that you've tried things like even like breathing or meditation at night. That's also very helpful. Gentle yoga. People can look at Yoga with Adriene or something of that nature, where it's an easy YouTube yoga video um, that can help us kind of calm down before bedtime.
All right, and I'll get to the next question in a second. If you have any issues like finding or typing questions in the Q&A tab, you can always raise your hand too. There's another button at the bottom, and that'll prompt me to, I can allow you to talk, and you can just give your questions over voice. All right, so next question. You mentioned gut health and its importance in not getting sick. Um,
Sorry, Jake, can you just add Kim she's on
mhm.
for, I don't know. She said she can't join on as a panelist.
Yeah, I'm
But
just going to unmute her.
okay. Kim, do you have,
And
sorry, before we go to the second question, Kim, do you have anything to add for the first one?
I honestly didn't hear because I've been trying to, I was
Oh,
trying to get
sorry.
in as a
So
panelist and it
the
wouldn't let me.
question, yeah, the question was, the person said they were able to fall asleep, but they couldn't stay asleep.
Um, I would look at definitely like so one thing to think about is that your sleep begins like your day your ability to sleep well at night begins honestly when you wake up in the morning. And so to really look at your day and as far as like what we were even talking about in this webinar in terms of your stress. So taking those time during the day to take moments to deep breathe, and we can talk more about this if this is something we want to go into this evening. But deep breaths, morning sunlight, like various things like movement throughout the day to help your body even prepare for the night. Because if you're super stressed all day, your body has a harder time having your heart rate lower and like sleep all night. That would be one thing. The other thing is to make sure that you're stopping eating 3 hours before you go to bed, because that allows your body to go into that rest state instead of the digest state. So if you're eating close to bed, that could also be causing you to be waking up at 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's great points. I also mentioned that in some people who drop their glucose in the middle of the night, though, sometimes eating almonds or fruits that kind of support serotonin can be helpful. But that's also maybe more of an exception than a rule.
And
Um,
well, and also you're talking about almonds, right? So those aren't like
Mhm.
a spiking type of food.
Right.
Um, that's something that's gonna like be more level with your blood sugar and help you with that. So that's a different situation. And if people are wondering about that, like you and I have talked about, Dr. Rao, is wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, can be really insightful for things like that as well.
Yeah, it's a great tool to help us understand what people's glucose are doing because sometimes people will have high fasting glucose and normal glucose control called a hemoglobin A1C, which they don't understand why their glucose is high in the morning, but it's also sometimes after you eat, the glucose goes up. So not the first morning your glucose is high. And some people who have perfect quote unquote lifestyles have very high glucose and hemoglobin A1C. They're pre-diabetic, they're insulin resistant, and it's kind of frustrating not to know when it's happening. Another place where glucose monitors are very helpful, but I think most people would benefit from wearing a CGM for about 2 weeks and kind of finding
Yes.
out. And sometimes
And
you
we can
learn.
help with that as well.
Hmm.
Um, if you get
Right.
a if you buy like a Stello, we can actually set it up so that we can watch their glucose readings. We can access those readings.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Um, Go
I
ahead. Sorry.
actually have another question from an attendee here. Any suggestions on stress that shows up as physical pain in my neck and upper back, especially since it gets intense by the end of the day?
That's a great question. I think that magnesium is a huge nutrient that gets very depleted very easily. And so you can use things like magnesium gel into the areas of your neck and back. Also, things that would kind of use both that parasympathetic tool and stretching, like a yoga or gentle yoga, even like small amounts of flexion extension, even if you feel like you don't have a lot of mobility is also very helpful. Like the gentle yoga by Yoga with Adriene, the YouTube videos are wonderful. You can do seated yoga if you can't do, it's not fancy, it's just kind of calming down. Supremely, anything that relaxes the body, the muscles get relaxed too. So that and magnesium gel, maybe I would try.
May I say one thing too about
Sure.
that? I experienced that type of discomfort when I had progressives in my glasses.
Hmm.
And so when I was sitting at a computer and I was noticing I was lifting my head constantly to look through that lower part. So I don't
Hmm.
know, because we don't know what else. That's just something that I experienced myself.
Very interesting. Yeah. Hope that was helpful.
All right, we'll go to the next question here. There are so many immune supplements out there. Which ones do you actually find consistently helpful during the winter, and how do we know which one we need?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think everyone should get a vitamin D level checked. Vitamin D is a huge immune booster. So I like people's vitamin D level between 30 and so it's the range is between 30 and I think up to 30 is it's normal. So I like it actually between 50 and 80. So most people are taking 2,000 to 5,000 IUs per day. And so that's one nutrient that I really like to be sturdy and kind of solidly on ground and heading into the winter. Vitamin C is also very beneficial. You can get vitamin C through foods, which maybe Kim can comment on, but also, vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams when you start to feel sick. I like zinc, about 30 milligrams a day. Zinc is a very effective nutrient for the immune system. And those are kind of the three key nutrients I do for vitamins. The other place I'd like to go to is mushrooms. Mushrooms have a very powerful immune modulation. Eating mushrooms every day might be a good habit for the winter because they are, and green tea is also wonderful to support your immune system. But mushroom related, I personally talk about transfer factors a lot from a company called Research Nutraceuticals. Usually when you're starting to get a little bit sick, it tends to like knock out the infection, especially if you catch it pretty early. So those are kind of the ones that I lean towards when I see people get sick, especially early on. How about you, Kim?
Um, yeah, so mushrooms are wonderful. I do take a mushroom supplement as well. And then like a lot of those citrus fruits that like are really refreshing and yummy, like you've heard, like oranges, grapefruits, lemons, limes. The key is though, it's the orange, the whole orange, not orange juice. Like you want to get the good fibers and those different things in there that comes as a whole package. And like the grapefruits, obviously, like you don't want to be putting the sugar on the grapefruit when you're eating it, but the like making having lemon water and lime water would be super helpful. And then even like things like tomatoes and peppers and broccoli, Brussels sprouts, like those whole foods. There's so many great ones. If you look it up, if you just do a quick Google, you could find some that like you're like, oh, these are my favorites. I would love to add those in. But those whole and don't be afraid of frozen. Like fresh, I understand like now, like sometimes it starts to come from far away and Maybe it doesn't look that great in the store. But like oftentimes the frozen vegetables are a great resource or frozen fruit as well, because they've been flash frozen when they've been picked, and there's a lot of nutrients that do stay in there. So I'll even just like cook often from frozen. I'll even roast vegetables from frozen. And also, when you're super busy, especially over this holiday season, they're already cut and washed for you. So you can just throw them in, you can steam them or saute them or roast them, and it's all done, and you can get a variety of vegetables that way.
Great.
All right.
Especially in the
So we have
winter
another question
sometimes.
here. On occasion, I awaken with sciatica, very painful. Any suggestions to stop this from happening?
Um, so there, Esra on? I don't know if he's here, but I think I would say that, I still use, I love that magnesium gel. And I also think positioning is very important. So sometimes if you elevate your feet or put something under your knees. Also, the position that you're sleeping in, that also may be an issue, which is causing maybe a dip if you're laying on your back. If you're laying on your side, sometimes putting something between your legs or in between your knees can sometimes help. Magnesium is my first go-to for any sort of muscle pain. Sciatica tends to be more of a nerve thing sometimes, and maybe Dr. S. Rao can answer some of that too. Is he on?
Yeah, I don't think we have Dr.
Oh, he's
Sidier
not on. Okay,
on right
okay.
now. But I'm going to send everyone a follow-up email, and I can send
Yeah.
information about that as
So,
well.
so I think magnesium, and also as well as using cushions and separations for the knee, putting the knee up, changing the pressure on the low back maybe to also see if that makes a difference. But Epsom salt soaks are also wonderful if you just want to soak your feet in a bucket before you get into bed. The magnesium gets in through the skin and goes through the whole body. It's a wonderful way to kind of relax your body and the muscles. It's helped a lot of people with some nighttime pain as well.
All right. We'll go with one more here. I've tried gratitude journaling before, but struggled to stay consistent. Do you have any tips on making a daily habit, or examples that I can use to help with emotional regulation?
Sorry, so repeat that question. I don't see it in, it's not, can you say that question again?
Yeah, I've tried gratitude journaling before, but I've struggled to stay consistent. Do you have any
Mhm.
tips for daily habits?
Kim, do you want to take that on?
Sure. So there is, and I can't think of his name right now, but he wrote the book Tiny Habits. It's a great book if you're interested, and he also has a podcast, and I can't think of his name right now, but I will look it up. But as far as what the whole idea is that you connect what you're trying to do with something you're already doing. So, for example, just this as far as it's called habit stacking. So, like just as an example, right? Like every time you have to pee, after you go to the bathroom, you do two push-ups. Just as an example. So now every single time you do that, you do two push-ups. Or every time that you're getting into the shower, you do two squats while the water's warming up. So that habit stacking. So with gratitude journaling, if this is something that you'd really like to do, because it is like scientifically proven, it does help with stress levels, like we've been talking about tonight, which will help your immune system. It's really an amazing tool that impacts our body, I think, bigger than we can realize. That bigger than we typically realize. I mean, anyway, so it could be where you say to yourself, like, okay, I'm going to say something thankful. One thing, it doesn't have to be sitting down for 5 minutes, because sometimes when we make those habits so big, that becomes very, it's like, so if I didn't do 5 minutes, I didn't do enough. But so if you can say, like, okay, every day I'm going to say one thing I'm thankful for before I begin eating my dinner, something like that. And and then if you want to that day, maybe you're more inspired to say more than one thing. Or maybe it's something where you put a post-it on your mirror. And when you go and floss at night, while you're flossing, you say a couple of things that you're grateful for while you're flossing. So, but also, if you would like to have this written down, if gratitude is something that you do want to work on, then maybe you have that notebook next to your bed and you start the whole process of okay, before I get into my bed and I'm sitting next to on my bed, next to my bed, I'm going to write one thing in my journal. So it's that whole habit stacking, something that he talks about in his book. And while Dr. Rao is, I will look for his name. He says like start every day when your feet hit the floor in the morning, say today's going to be a great day. And that can really change your mindset as you every day. Like so now you have this different outlook. And yes, not every day is going to be a great day, but can like shift the mindset. So I hope and I just looked him up. It's BJ Fogg, Fogg. And he has a great TED talk all about the topic as well. But I hope that helps.
That's great. Those are great. And I think that, you know, the whole thing about it's not a perfect world or a perfect day. It's not, rarely going to be perfect. It's kind of like what your mind will focus on. If, say, you stubbed your toe on the door and you saw a lot of sunshine through the window, you're focusing more on, oh, wow, there's a lot of sunshine in the window, not focusing on the fact that you hit the door that, oh gosh, it's gonna be a bad day because I hit my foot on the door. So you're trying to shift the body and the mind to kind of keep looking for the good things versus the bad things. And so what gratitude and kind of optimism and all those things that we do in gratitude journaling is a tool to kind of keep shifting the brain to keep looking for those good things that are happening during the day. So I love those suggestions, Kim. Those are great. I don't see any more questions, Jake.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up. And I'm going to be sending everyone a follow-up question. And sorry for any confusion. I know my name says Dr. Sudhir Rao. This is just the account.
That's
But
okay.
any questions related to like sciatica pain or pain management, we'll include resources from pain and spine specialists as well. But also any topics discussed here. Um, I'll include resources in a follow-up email with also a full copy of the webinar. So if anything comes up when you rewatch the webinar, if you think of any questions between now and then, there'll be links within that email to ask your questions, and we'll just follow up from there. But thanks everyone for joining, and
Thank you,
we're gonna
everyone. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Kim, for coming on.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye. Have a great
Bye.
night.